Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to show how to texture an eyeball inside of ZBrush using a texture. So this is oops, just a random face I built a while ago. Here's some random things that are showing up. I don't know why. But I placed a sphere right inside of there. And in order for this to be painted on, oopsie doozies. There it is. It has to be a polymesh 3D. So if it's not, then it won't work. So I actually, just to get them lined up, or to create them with UVs and all that jazz, I just made spheres inside Maya and exported them and then brought them back in. And then made them polymesh 3Ds. And then I was able just to append and then add this to another item. So I added my spheres to this guy so that I would have spheres on there. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is obviously assign a material to this. So I have the eyeball selected, and trying to find something that is going to look good is what we want here. So maybe something like this reflect red, and then we can just go into some of these colors here. There's a little arrow right there, and if you can isolate where this red's coming from, then we could obviously just eliminate that. It's coming from somewhere. Modifiers. That's white. Oops. And you see what that one does. It just adds a nice texture to the entire character. We don't need to really look at the face right now. I'm just going to turn that off. Yeah, so I turn this red off and I put the sky in here, then I turn the saturation down. And a lot of these you can just kind of look at and see what these are going to do. Something like that might be a good kind of base for the eyes because it kind of gives us some reflections inside it. We're going to paint a texture on top of this, obviously. But it does give us kind of like a nice starting point. There we go. Okay, so let's stick with that. So I want to make sure my mRGB is clicked, my Z ads are off, and I'm just going to fill this object with that material. Okay. Now in order for us to paint on here and make it look nice, like if I go in here and grab orange, and I start painting, it's going to be kind of blocky because there's not very many divisions. So I'm going to hit Control D a couple times. Okay, and so now as we paint, it'll be obviously a bit smoother. So the first thing I want to do is go through and just paint this thing kind of like not pure white, because your eye isn't like a pure white. It's a little bit off. So I'm just going to paint this with this white tone here. Make sure I'm now set to RGB. There we go. I think I want to knock this color down still a bit more. I'm just rotating it. There we go. So I took the opacity down. So there we go. All right, so that's better. So now as I turn this texture off, and I start painting that white, you can see how it gives it just that tone of that white color. Just so you can see, if I went with red, I'd have this like red color on top of it. All right. So I went with that white just to kind of give it a base overall color. And it's already in the eye socket, and I'll show you how to line it up in the eye socket a little bit later. So now what I want to do is bring in my texture. So I'm going to go up to texture, and I'm going to bring in the eye. So I'm going to click on this, and this will say, you know, what texture do you want, and I'm going to import. And I just found this in the free textures available. So once I have this here, there it is, I'm going to go down to this button and say add to spotlight. Okay, lightbox pops up. I just close lightbox. And this is where we can scale the texture down that we're going to project. I can move it over. There's a circle right here. If I click and drag the circle, it moves this menu. But if I click and drag outside that circle, it'll move the texture. So what I'm going to do is kind of line this up as to where I want that pupil to be, or where I want the pupil, iris to be. All right, so maybe about there, okay? So what I need to do is I need to paint in the black of the pupil so that it'll just sit right on top of it, so I don't have to worry about painting right here. So I'm going to hit Shift-Z, and that makes that go away. I'm going to switch my color to black, and I know that my pupil is going to be about here. Okay, so right about there. Hit Shift-Z again. This brings the texture back. And then I can hit Z to bring this menu back. I can adjust it a little bit further if I need to. And then once I'm done, I just tap Z, and then I just paint. There we go. I can hit Shift-Z, and now you'll see that we have this eye texture right on the eyeball itself. Okay, now it is just a texture, so there's not a lot of detail that went into it. If you want an actual eyeball, we'd actually do some sculpting to the eyeball itself to get it. But for what we're doing, that'll be sufficient just to kind of give us that idea of it. Now, it would be nice if the eye had a little highlight in it. That stuff can be added inside of Photoshop when you bring your still image into Photoshop. Now here's how you can place your object. So I have this other sphere that's already placed somewhere right there. I'm just going to delete this one, okay, because I don't need that one because I already have the other one textured. So what I can do is just take this one and duplicate it. All right, and then I can take either one of these, and I'm going to go up here to the Move tool. And the Move tool is weird. You just have to get kind of used to it. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to hold Shift. And it brings up this weird circle-y thing here. Be aware that like this one will actually like scale it, which is weird. But this one here in the middle is the one we can use just to scoot it over. Okay, so I scooted it over, and then I can go to rotate. I shouldn't have to scale it. It might just be some movings and some rotations that I have to do. There we go. Go back to the Move tool. Nudge it in a little bit. Alright, so let me turn the other one on so we can see it. Right, so pretty much lined up. This one could probably come down just a hair. Go back to the draw menu. Alright, so that's how we can texture eyeballs on there. Now I could have used any one of these. Let me just duplicate this so I don't ruin that original one. Any one of these other materials here just to kind of play with to see, because there is like a more of a metallic texture that maybe I could have used this one to start off with. And then color this white. Let me hide these. And then went to color, went to fill object, and use this as my starting point too, and that, you know, that looks like a good base as well. There's lots of different ones you can kind of play with inside here. Basic material down here would work. A lot of these you can kind of just keep messing around with and playing with. Ah, there we go. All right. So now there is my metallic guy with brown eyes. Now I could have taken this image in Photoshop also and adjusted what that image looks like. I could also adjust these eyeballs further. Okay, I'm on that brush. I'm going to change this to the drag. I'm going to go to my material here. I believe somewhere in here there's like wavy lines like that. I can pick like a red color, take the intensity down. Let's see how I can add little veins to the side of the eye just to make it look a little bit more realistic. I don't want to go crazy with it, but we can create a neat look so that when we do have the character on, we see a little bit more detail. And the nice thing too with modeling this the way we did, or texturing it, is that we can still sculpt stuff on here. So right now I've sculpted, or I'm sculpting this inner piece. So I'm just pushing it in. And you can see how now that's kind of dented in a little bit. And that would actually catch the light a little bit better and could give us a little bit nicer results. Now once it's a texture, we can still do the same stuff. Like I could feather, so let me soften my RGB intensity on here. I could feather this edge a little bit, feather this edge a little bit. Okay, I'm on my Z add. Oops. I could sculpt this a little bit too if I wanted to give this a little bit more detail. Okay, so there's lots of stuff that we could do with it. We'd actually put another sphere on top of it, but we're just getting, a bit too more complex than I want to with that. Okay. So there we go. Now why those things are that color up here, I'm not sure. I'm just going to go color. There we go. So somehow those faces didn't get assigned. All right. So there's this guy with some eyes now. And then in Photoshop, we could also knock them down. Obviously, the coloring on this is really, really, really dark, and his eyes are really, really, really bright. We can knock that down inside of Photoshop or inside of here or whatever. We can keep playing either way. All right, so there's how you add a texture to your eyes.